Welcome back. Today we're talking about Cinderella, another classic. I decided to do a bigger one. I was gonna do the story we know, older story, let's talk about it, but I started to dissect the story that we know, and there's a lot to talk about. So I might have to make this one a two-parter and just talk about how we know the story of Cinderella now and why it was rewritten the way it was, because there is just so much more to it than some of the other ones so far, like Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty, oh, absolutely love Sleeping Beauty, but it was pretty superficial, and that word has a lot of negative connotations. I don't mean superficial in a bad way. It's okay for movies to be superficial. Sometimes we just need to be entertained, and that's what Sleeping Beauty did. But Cinderella, on the other hand, has so many layers to it, and I really want to dive into those layers. But the original Cinderella has so many layers too, and I don't want to miss out on that opportunity to talk about the layers of both by trying to fit it all into one. So let's just talk about how we know Cinderella now, and then we can talk about how Cinderella was originally written. Start with Cinderella. We have a tiny kingdom because we don't want to have anything too noticeable, and there's a chateau, which are gorgeous, and there's a widowed gentleman. It's very sad. He's lost his wife. We can all sympathize with this character, and he has a little daughter. Come on, single dad with a little girl. Already your heartstrings are pulling for these characters. And this is our first introduction to Cinderella. And she's this beautiful little girl in this fluffy dress, and you see her sitting with her dad at this water fountain, and they've set it up. Gorgeous imagery. She needs a mom, right? That's what we're going to be led to believe. The dad has this guilt that he's not enough for her. She needs a mom. So he gets remarried. And this woman has 2 daughters. So on paper, she's perfect. She comes from a good family, has 2 daughters of her own. She's going to be the role model that Cinderella needs. But then you see her, and already you're like, no, this lady is bad news. Why did he marry her? He's nice, he's wealthy, he's got a gorgeous home, a beautiful, sweet daughter. Why did he marry this woman? She doesn't look nice. What charms did she possibly have that tricked this guy into marrying her? The only thing you can think is that he was just that desperate to find someone for his daughter, which is commendable, right? Attached to the dad. He dies. And we are immediately heartbroken for Cinderella. And right away, the stepmom's nature comes out. She's cruel, she's jealous. She doesn't like Cinderella at all. And you see Cinderella crying over her father, and you just see the stepmom standing with her 2 daughters, watching. And you're like, what the heck? What is this? No concern whatsoever from any of them. They set it up really well, in other words. Very well thought out, in my opinion. Mention that the daughters are awkward, the stepdaughters. And I wanted to point this out because the word awkward is given. You think awkward, you think of a duck walking, you think of silly things, you think of things that don't fit in. And now we've given this to 2 other little girls, that they're awkward. I thought this was important because this is a children's story, and we are setting it up for children to accept what is awkward and what is not awkward. They're then going to project that out into their reality. What is awkward and what is not awkward. Social norms dictate what is considered awkward and what is not considered awkward. And I think that's important just to note, just to keep in mind. They're needed, but it's important to keep those in your mind that when you make identifications of if someone is awkward or not awkward, were they the right identifications? And why are you doing it? Is it because society has dictated that that is the norm? I just thought that was, when I heard, and her 2 awkward daughters, I'm like, okay, but they're little kids. And I remember being a little kid and hearing her 2 awkward daughters, and that becoming a defining moment of, that's awkward, and Cinderella's not awkward, don't want to be that, want to be that. Just a cautionary pinpoint. Not necessarily something to be like demonizing, just to be cautious of. So goes into disrepair. Fortune is squandered on the 2 stepdaughters and their vain attitudes that have no doubt been flourished by their stepmother. This is another key thing, that the attitudes of the parents, it does get passed down. There is nurture in the way an individual develops from childhood to adulthood. And meanwhile, Cinderella, she's abused, she's humiliated, she's made to be a servant in her own home. Remember, she lived here before they did. Why is she a servant in the home that she lived in before them? It's not right. So this was really interesting. I started to do a little research on, well, okay, so a biological parent dies and the step-parent is the only person that the child can live with, right? And then they're abused and humiliated like Cinderella is. How often does this happen? Does it happen at all? Or is this just being perpetuated in a stereotype? So I researched this, and it's actually known as the Cinderella effect. Highest risk of falling victim to the Cinderella effect are going to be step-parents who are now responsible for children who are not biologically theirs after the death of the biological parent, as in Cinderella. However, it also applies to just step-parents in general, parents of those with handicapped children, those of extremely young children, and prepubescent children as well. So it doesn't mean it's just the situation of a biological parent dies and the step-parent then becomes abusive to their stepchild. There are other circumstances that can bring out the Cinderella effect. Remember, this does not mean that all step-parents are going to fall victim to the Cinderella effect. This does not mean that all parents of handicapable children are going to fall victim to the Cinderella effect. This does not mean that all parents of extremely young children or prepubescent children are going to fall victim to the Cinderella effect. It just means that there is a higher risk associated with individuals in those categories. It's just like with anything else in life, when you have to take in assessments of risks, you analyze the situation. So maybe you have a family history of a certain disease. Well, guess what? Now you have a higher risk of contracting that disease. Same thing goes for the Cinderella effect. It just puts you in a certain category of a higher risk. Doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in that category is going to fall victim to it. But because we're talking about Cinderella, I I really wanted to dive into the mental state of anything that had to do with Cinderella. And Cinderella Effect has to do with that. It literally does. It came about because of the situation of biological parent dies, step-parent has to take over the responsibilities, and it's too much. Although with Cinderella, it's not too much. She just literally doesn't care. So it's a dramatic interpretation of that. But still, a Cinderella effect can happen for numerous reasons. There are many factors that can affect a person's reasoning behind their actions. The biggest one is going to be there's no one watching. There's no accountability. It's not their child biologically, and they don't have the same sense of responsibility, and no one's watching them to tell them no. That's a huge factor. Other factors, though, that come into play are going to be income, stress, a connection with the child, and social norms. You know, again, with the social norms. So, moving off of that extremely serious topic and getting back to the story, this whole time, Cinderella, she remains kind and gentle. It calls to mind for me the theory of nature and nurture. No doubt, she was probably born with some genetics that gave her the predisposition of being gentle and kind, because that is hard to be put in a position of abuse, humiliation, day in and day out, and still maintain that kind of attitude. So there has to be something inside of you that just naturally you're just that way. But then also, there's the nature that we just talked about, but there's the nurture, and that comes from her father, right? Because he was so nice to her, he was so sweet to her, he taught her well before he passed. She goes from being a child to being essentially an adult. Now, if someone wants to correct me on her age, she seems like she's a lot older. I don't know exactly what her age is. I've read before all the ages of the princesses, and I know they're all supposed to be pretty young, but I think Cinderella is one of the slightly older ones. But meanwhile, she is having to do all this. She gets nothing, but she does chores all day long, from the time she wakes up to the time she goes to sleep, and her stepsisters get everything done for them. They don't have to do anything, and they get everything they want. Look at their attitudes. One is sweet and kind, the other is rotten and cruel. We see Cinderella, and she's waking up from her dreams. And the dreams are a big deal, right? Dreams can be so complex, and there have been many psychologists who have tried to analyze and come up with their own theories about what dreams mean. And I think it's still one of the great mysteries of the world. Kind of like the ocean, how there's still so much of it that's been undiscovered. I think dreams are one aspect that we still don't know a lot about. And I kind of like that. I like that there's still a little bit of mystery out there, but we do have some theories. And I think that's kind of cool. And so we can throw a couple of them out there and interpret them. And so we're going to do that. Sigmund Freud, who believed that dreams were a window into the way the mind works. So a little less about the fluff of dreams and a little more about the fact that the mind is complex, and so dreams are a way to sort of get in under the hood of the car and sort of see how it operates. A lot of people had a lot of criticisms for Freud, but he was sort of the first one to be like, they can kind of give us a glimpse about the mind, because we think too much when we're awake. So we want to analyze what we're saying all the time, but let's analyze what we're thinking when we're not thinking, and how, like, mind-boggling is that? Let's think about what we're thinking when we're not thinking. We had Beyond, who believed that dreams are our emotional responses to the experiences that we have when we're awake. And I like that. Have you ever had a bad day and then you have nightmares that night? Or have you had a good day and then you've had lovely dreams that night? I feel like this is hitting the mark a little closer. And he built off of Freud and his theories. I feel like I've had this happen more often than any of the other theorists, that if you've had a bad day and then you have nightmares, we call them nightmares and there's a lot of bad connotations with nightmares, but are they really so bad? Maybe we have bad emotions attached to them and we're working through those emotions, and it takes us stopping and not thinking so hard and letting our mind work through it. It's cathartic. It's a therapy in and of itself. And that's how I wake up. Yeah, maybe I don't always feel so great because of the nightmare, but maybe my mind got through something that I couldn't do when I was thinking too hard. Just maybe something to think about after I just said we think too hard. But maybe it is something to think about, that there should be some acceptance in dreams, whether good or bad, that even if they're bad, maybe your mind is trying to help you when you can't help yourself when you're thinking too hard. But it's okay, so let's get back. I got a little serious again. I told you, Cinderella is very complex. It's got a lot of layers. I don't know if the writers were just like connected to this one or what, but so she's dreaming and she wakes up and she says they're wishes that you wish you could have. And so I think her mind is working through a lot of things, that she's got a lot of things that just aren't working out for her. She had something and it was taken away from her, and so she dreams about the things that she had. I think it's her mind working through that. And then because she just has a good nature in her, a positive attitude, she's able to see them as positive. She's got a lot of good qualities to take away. I think she's a good role model. I mean, at least at this point, we can talk about it. Maybe she's got some bad qualities, but at this point, I think she's a good role model. Someone that I would definitely let daughters look up to at this point. At least for her dreams and her good attitude, regardless of anything that's thrown at her. You look at what she's wearing. She's wearing rags. Literally has a rag to protect her hair, an apron. You get the feeling that she probably has one outfit that she has to wear day in and day out. But her little mice friends are taking care of it and cleaning it. I think that's important. I've had jobs from the bottom of the barrel to higher up, and I've seen people from all different positions, and it was always my take on it that it didn't matter. I always thought I should present myself in the best way possible. I'm still presenting myself. It's still a reflection of me. So it didn't matter if I had the worst job ever. I was still going to make sure my clothes were good, whether they were from, the thrift store or the best store, right? And I get that from Cinderella. I get that she doesn't care if her clothes are 5 years old and literally rags. She's going to dust them off and make sure they look the best they can look and make sure that she looks presentable. I don't know. Tell me what you think about that one, because I think this one's probably a little more controversial. And I don't know why, but I just get that feeling. I do think that presenting your best self is important. It's just a theory I have, and I've seen people who also hold that belief, and I've seen people who literally could care less about their appearance, and maybe that is another social norm. Maybe I've just been perpetuating that social norm, and it is something that we should care less about. But I find myself caring about that. To the castle, the king is throwing a temper tantrum. His prince, his son, is not married, so he must be reaching adulthood or be in adulthood, and this is not a good thing. If we know nothing about the way that royalty works, we know that they need to have an heir. They need to keep the line going. And if his son is not married, he cannot have a son or a daughter or any child to carry on the line. And this is going to be an issue. King is pissed. And he's throwing a temper tantrum. And also, this part was a little bit of a character trait that you got to see that was, oh, okay, I get it. He wants a grandchild as well, you know? Like, he's getting up there in years, and that's a big deal. You want to be able to see the next generation. So that's another thing. He wants a grandchild. It's not just about the kingdom and the heir. He also wants to see little kids, and he wants to play with them and be able to give them presents and be able to enjoy that before it's too late. So he decides to throw a big old ball. Like, invite everyone. At this point, he doesn't even care. Doesn't even have to be a princess. As long as they are within the reach of their social norms, being that they can't come from a lower class, which is not great, but let's move past that, they can come. Which is, in and of itself, a little progressive. At least for a king, right? So now the invitation comes. And Cinderella takes it. She gives it. Stepmom reads it. And they start getting excited. Cinderella's excited too, because she hears it. And regardless of anything, she knows her birthright. She knows it. She will sweep, mop, scrub, do anything she's asked of. But she also still knows who she is. And that she has every right to be going to that ball as well. What's the stepmom to do? She can't say no. She would like to, but she cannot go against literally the king's orders. Like that's stepping outside of her own home. And go back to the Cinderella effect. Remember how I said there's no one watching? There's no accountability? We're kind of getting a glimpse of it again. So far, there's been no one to tell the stepmom, no, you can't do that. But here is something where she is going to be held accountable. If she says no, she will be held accountable. The king wants every eligible lady there. If she doesn't let her go, she has now gone against the law of the land. That's accountability, right? However, she's not going to make it easy for her, is she? No. She's going to have just a laundry list of chores for her to do. She's going to make it seem like I'm so sorry. There isn't any way you're going to make it. Oh my gosh. But here's Cinderella. I mean, she's been doing this since she was what? 6, 7 when her dad died? She thinks that this is going to be enough to stop her? No. No, ma'am. You can get out of here right now. She does it all. She does it all. But unfortunately, She has no dress. Thankfully, her little animal friends, her little Mises, have been working on that for her. So they have the dress ready for her. And she comes down and she's so excited, even though her dress is not like the best. It's not in fashion. Like, we want to talk about social norms. If I were to go to, I don't know, some red carpet event, there's no way anything in my closet would match up to anyone there. Like, but you can bet your bottom dollar I would put it on. I'd put on my best fake jewelry and I'd be there. I would be Cinderella right now, heading out there in her little pink dress, because I'm not missing it. I don't care. And that's what Cinderella did. She came down. She's like, I'm not missing this. I got my dress. I don't care if it's not in fashion. And she gets down there and, oof, her stepsisters are pissed off. They're not happy about this. And the stepmom, being the ever clever, ever cruel lady that she is, figures out a way to wreck these plans once again. And they tear it apart. Well, this is the last straw for poor Cinderella. I mean, this one just breaks your heart. So Cinderella can't take this. This one breaks her. She did everything. She did all she was asked of. She figured out the dress, albeit with help from her friends, but she figured it out. And she's still not going to make it to the ball. It's very sad. As a child, it definitely breaks your heart. What can you say? You can imagine being a kid and maybe thinking about all the little things that break kids' hearts. Maybe like, I don't know, we'll go to the pool if you guys do this, this, and this. Clean your room, take out the trash, and I don't know, go brush your teeth. And they get all that done, and they go to get their bathing suit on, and then they tear it or something like that. And then it's, what can you do? Can't go. You don't have a bathing suit to wear. So that's in your mind, like that's what a little kid would be thinking. So little kids can relate to this very adult situation. They just bring it down to their thought processes. But all is not lost. Don't worry. This is a fairy tale. This is why fairy tales are great. We all know all is not lost. Fairy godmother comes. Poor Cinderella's crying. Fairy godmother has to convince her that she's even there. And she's asking her why she's crying, and they figure it out, you know. This is crunch time. They gather all these very ordinary things, which I think is also very clever. You know, use what you have. Be resourceful. You don't need, hear the words, you don't need all the best things, the fancy things in life. You can use what's around you to achieve your goals. The pumpkin, the Mises, or mice. I don't know which one's correct. The mice, I guess, is correct. Use the horse, but not as a horse. Use it as something else. And they gather all these things, and it's just here's the other thing. The dress, right? So they gathered all these things and got it figured out. And then she forgets the dress. But that's important. Yes, it was funny, but maybe there was more to it than just to be funny. Just to be like, oh, I forgot. Maybe there's more to it. Forget the dress, because again, we go back to the dress wasn't so important. It's the person in the dress. It's the Cinderella that's important. I could show up to a red carpet event right now in whatever I could manage, and it would be okay. The dress isn't as important. Okay? But of course, we gotta have the dress. So she spins her around and gives her just the most beautiful thing ever. Can't even begin to tell you. Love it. Absolutely love it. from head to toe. Okay, got to get her in there. Got to get her going. Get her to the ball. Right? Like, there's no time to spare. But then don't forget, there's a time limit on this. All magic, whether real or manifested, there's a time limit. What's fascinating about the ball is the king threw all this together. He's so desperate for his son to just marry someone. And his son is just looking bored. He's not about this, because you can't force it. Okay? You can't force love. You can't force relationships. You can't force it. But the king's trying. And son's not about this forcing thing. He's there. He's got his obligations. But he's really not having fun. He's dancing, meeting the ladies. And then in comes beautiful Cinderella. Just the grandest entrance ever. Can you just imagine having a moment like that? Okay. Daydreaming over here on a magical moment. But he stops. He sees it. I mean, this is the love at first sight moment. We have that phrase for a reason. And how many couples are there out there that if you ask them when they first saw their significant other, they say it was love at first sight. It's a instant connection that people have with one another. And this is what they are portraying, is that he saw her and there was an instant connection. He forgets everyone else that's there. He walks right up to her. She doesn't even get introduced. And he just sweeps her away. And they start dancing. The king is in a tizzy because he's never seen his son act this way. And so he recognizes, like, they give the king a very pompous, kingly sort of persona. But if you really cut away at all that, he does care about his son. He cares about future grandchildren. He cares about his kingdom. He does care. And so the king wants to know, who is this? Who is this? Because this is it. I can see my son is reacting differently here. This is important. Let's stop. Let's figure it out. He says no one's to disturb them. If he's happy right now, you better damn well make sure it's not interrupted. And then they're all alone. It's as if the ball's not even happening. And we get our beautiful love song. Gotta have those. And he tries to figure out who she is, right? That's the next step. There's the instant attraction, but then you gotta find out who this person is. And I actually like that. They actually, for once, like, who are you? It's not just, oh my gosh, I love you, let's get married. He wants to know. But then the clock ticks, and she's gotta go. I mean, it can't be helped. Would love to keep talking, but can't do it. Gotta go. Because she doesn't want to be found out. That wouldn't be good either, right? So she runs off. And of course he's chasing her. And I do think it's a little hilarious that he can't catch her. I mean, she's in heels, in a huge dress. And I am very sure that he's had a lot more conditioning than she has, and would more than likely be able to catch her in real life. But that's besides the point. It's just fairy tale, right? So she's got to get away. But she loses her shoe because we got to leave something behind. We got to leave a clue. And she keeps going. She gets in her carriage. They send, the cavalry to go and catch her. And they're chasing her through the town to no avail. So Cinderella's back to normal again because midnight came. And it can't last forever, right? But she's so happy for the experience. And this again goes back to her good nature, that she's not even mad about it. I mean, here she met her true love, or who she believes. You know what? Actually, maybe she does recognize that you can't just fall in love with someone off of one experience. And so she's not even mad about this. She's just happy that she had one night of her old life back. And on top of that, she's happy she has this shoe to remember. And so come tomorrow, life is back to normal. She's back to scrubbing, back to cleaning. But the king is not going to let this go. And beyond that, the prince isn't going to let this go. And so now the search begins to find Cinderella. They're searching. They're trying this shoe on every girl because apparently this shoe will only fit one. There has to be some clue, right? So the shoe is going to be the clue. Finally, they get to the chateau. And the stepmother realizes, because again, she is clever and she is cruel, that this is an opportunity because the prince doesn't really know who the girl was. And they can, cuckold the prince as long as the shoe fits. But then she starts to realize Cinderella's acting a little funny. And just like the king and how he realized his son was acting funny, the stepmother notices Cinderella's acting funny. But unlike the king, who is looking out for his son, the stepmother is most definitely not looking out for Cinderella. In fact, she's a hindrance. And so she locks her away. Yep, she's not going to get to try on the shoe, which is so sad. So cruel. Thank goodness for the Mises. I keep saying Mises. I'm pretty sure that is incorrect. It's mice. But Mises is so much cuter. Okay, let's get past that. Thank goodness for the mice. Because they eventually get the key that unlocks the door for Cinderella. But first, we try on the shoes with the stepsisters, and they're not going to fit, and they don't fit. The mice unlock the door, and in the last moment, because this is the dramatic part, right? It's got to be the last moment. Cinderella comes running down. She's like, wait, let me try first. And goes to put it on, and it fits perfectly. Fits perfectly. So then we're whisked away, right? And there's a wedding, and Cinderella is with her prince, and they're gonna live happily ever after. What I think is interesting too is that we really don't know much about the prince. We really don't know much about many of the princes, do we? I think the only ones we ever know about are the Beast in Beauty and the Beast and Prince Eric in Little Mermaid. Usually the prince isn't very well known, is he? Maybe we should get to know these princes a little better. It would be nice. But I do like that in this one, it seems like maybe, even though the wedding scene cuts right away, maybe they got to know each other a little bit more. There was a little bit more courtship. So again, I feel like Cinderella is a good role model. I really do. She was never cruel, even though cruelty met her at every turn. She approached every adversity, every challenge with a good heart and kindness. She didn't care about materialistic stuff. And even when she had materialistic stuff and then lost it, it was okay. That is something that I think is very lost on the world and in humans, in that enjoy the things you have. Nobody is saying you shouldn't enjoy them. You shouldn't feel, happy if you have things. There shouldn't be a guilt associated with the stuff that you have, but just don't hold on too tightly to it, because those things can go away. And if you're ever found in that position where your things go away, you're not going to want to be so distraught that is what defines you. Like Cinderella, she had it all. She had the chateau. She had her father. She had money. She had her title. She had everything. And it was taken away from her. She didn't let it define her. And in fact, the things that she then did have, her rags, her little room, she took care of. Because those were hers. Learn that lesson. Again, she's a great role model. And then when she got the things from her fairy godmother, and they went away. Did she dwell on it? No. She was happy to have had it, grateful for the experience, and moved on. Those are such great qualities. Ones that you can only hope to exemplify in your own life. Yeah, this is a good one. Lots to learn from Cinderella. I know people think that, fairy tales, they're silly. They're very silly. They're meant for children, right? But what do we try and do with children? We try to teach them things that are going to be important as adults. And sometimes we don't think hard enough about what those stories are that we're telling them. There's a purpose behind the stories that we tell them, and we need to think about that, because I think nowadays we're just telling stories to tell stories, and they don't hold any weight. They don't hold any meaning anymore, and they need to start holding meaning again. And if we know what the meaning is, then we can tell the story with some real emphasis, and they'll see that, and that'll hold weight with them. I feel like I could probably keep talking about Cinderella. There's so much more, and like I said, we haven't even talked about the original story of Cinderella. Let me tell you, there's going to be so much in that one as well. But can't just keep doing that. This would be too long. No one would listen. I'm sure no one's listening right now. I'm just me talking. So enjoy your day, and happy trails, and don't stop reading fairy tales. All right. Bye, guys.